Thruxted Mill. The abandoned animal rendering plant between Canterbury and Ashford which remains derelict. If you wanted to film a horror movie in Kent, you'd struggle to find a more suitable location than the long-abandoned Thruxted Mill. A series of derelict workshops, a rundown boiler house, crushing plant and large wastewater tank make up the eerie 7-acre site. Nestled in the heart of an area of outstanding natural beauty outside Canterbury, the factory is a grim sight and gives off an almighty stench too. The potentially contaminated site, located outside Misterley between Chatham and Godmersham, rose to prominence in the 1990s for its part in managing mad cow disease. It was one of 5 UK sites tasked with disposing the remains of cattle infected with bovine spongiform encephalopathy, known as BSE. Following its key role in the crisis, widespread fears of soil contamination linger on despite the mill closing down 14 years ago. In the 90s and noughties, truckloads of animal remains were ferried to the Pennypot Lane site, where machines separated animal fats and protein residue from the bone. There were reports of piles of carcasses regularly being dumped in the yard area and a constant stench hanging over the countryside. It was not uncommon for the surrounding roads to become littered with chunks of dead cattle. Residents also spied the unsavory sight of legs and heads sticking out from skips. In 2008, a lost lorry trying to find its way to the mill spilt tongue remains and lumps of a bladder the size of a football in Beach Avenue, Chatham. Resident Peter Hancock said at the time, "I have lived here for about 6 years and we have frequently had fluid spillages, but this was one lump of guts too far. The smell was horrible." Shailesh Dixit, landlord of the local in nearby Cockering Road, said, "The lorries run virtually past the door and there have been a number of spillages. It happens frequently. Usually the animal parts are carried in container lorries, but recently I have noticed a number of skip lorries going to the mill. They are covered with tarpaulins, but sometimes you can see legs and heads sticking out. It is disgusting and leaves an almighty stench." Thought to have originally been developed as a sawmill in the 1960s, Thruxted was later transformed into an animal rendering plant run by Canterbury Mills Limited. Documents on company's house show how the firm was dissolved in 2010, following the closure of the mill 2 years prior. In recent months, urban explorers have trespassed on the site and looked around the abandoned buildings where cow carcasses were processed. Commenting on a forum, one wrote, "This place stinks. I've smelled some bad things in my time exploring, but nothing, absolutely nothing, will beat this place. That smell stayed with me until I got home and had a bath." They reported how pigeons have taken up residence in the derelict factory, and bones from decades-old carcasses still lay on the floor. Wellington boots, workwear, old TVs, and lads' magazines also sit cobwebbed in the former workshops. In 1998, Dr. Alan Colchester, a consultant neurologist at Guy's Hospital in London, spoke with the BBC regarding Thruxted. "There's really quite strong evidence that, at least some years ago, there was very poor procedural supervision at that mill," he said. Infected remains of animals were left lying around, and probably contaminated protein-carrying material is still lying around in large quantities in and under the soil on that site. He added that the soil could infect humans who came into contact with it through the mouth, eyes, nose, and through the water supply. Villagers were therefore astonished when plans to demolish the mill and replace it with a mini-housing estate were drawn up in 2017 by Trevor Heathcote, the man behind numerous companies, including Country-Style Recycling. Developers hoping to build 20 homes pledged to decontaminate the site at an estimated cost of £1.75 million. They stressed how soil studies showed evidence of matter including asbestos, metals, petroleum oils, and fats, but no microbiological species, such as anthrax or salmonella, were found. In determining the scheme, Ashford Borough Council recognised how the old mill had the most dreadful legacy and looked favourably upon the idea of giving it a rebirth. Despite controversy during the planning process, it was granted outline planning permission. Former Secretary of State for Housing, Robert Jenrick, determined an environmental impact assessment, EIA, into potential land contamination was not necessary. However, A legal challenge from disgruntled resident Camilla Swire, the wife of a Chatham-based billionaire Barnaby Swire, halted the project's progress. A judicial review was launched and a High Court judge found the minister lacked expert evidence in reaching his decision. The ruling was therefore overturned and an EIA was required. A year and a half later, the application was pulled without any sign of an impact statement being submitted. In the 12 months since, the site has remained as it has for the past 14 years, empty and run down.